Of Afghanistan to the reefs in Australia, Lonely Planet has been guiding travellers around the globe for the last 50 years. Now, in 1972, newlyweds Tony and Maureen Wheeler set off on the hippie trail after buying a second-hand minivan for just £50. They started in Harwich in Essex with just £400 and travelled through much of Europe and much of Asia. And then 6 months later, they found themselves on Australia's remote northwest Cape, which became their home, and where they started writing their first Lonely Planet guidebook. Across Asia on the Cheap was released in 1973 and sold around 1,500 copies just in the first week alone. And since then, they've sold more than 150 million guidebooks in 33 different languages.
It is a lot of information, and we can speak now to one half of that duo. That's Tony Wheeler, who joins us now. Morning to you, Tony.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we saw that fantastic picture of you all those years ago when you were just about to start on your travels as you travelled as a couple. I think it's quite hard for people to understand that information just wasn't out there before, was it? If you were going somewhere, who did you ask? It was quite hard to find things out.
Yeah, it certainly was. You know, the world in that respect has changed so much. You know, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have information at our fingertips. So when we set out, you know, we had a couple of sort of roneoed notes of where to go, but mainly it was meeting people coming the other way and saying, where did you go? Where did you stay? How did it all work for you? That was the answer in those days.
And was it instantly obvious? I mean, when you started doing what you did, started writing things down, how quickly did you realise there was a market in this? There was a business to be done?
Well, as soon as people started asking us all the time, they would say, where did you go? How did you do it? You know, we sold our old minivan in Afghanistan. What is the used car market like in Afghanistan? These sort of really important questions. And once we began to realise how there was a shortage of information, we thought, well, why don't we be the people who supply that? And that turned out to be a very good idea.
Tony, morning to you. It's Naga here. What was the Lonely Planet guide that surprised you the most in terms of popularity?
Oh, you know, lots of them have surprised me, and I've always liked the weird and wonderful ones. And you do a place that nobody else thinks you're going to do a guidebook for, and you know, people are a little astonished there's a demand. I remember we did our first guidebook to Iran, and people would say, Iran? You know, that's got the Ayatollah shaking things up. And yet the people in Iran are wonderful, and anybody who goes there has a great time. Shame about the government. But a lot of countries are like that. You've got to remember that the government isn't the whole story. It's the people you meet in the street who really count.
And, you know, the joy of the Lonely Planet books and guidebooks that have followed in the wake are finding the little nooks and crannies that make a holiday feel so much more special, so much more personal. Yet you've got to have that balance, haven't you? You've got to have that balance right, because if you get that little nook and cranny and you put it in the book, it stops being something so exclusive and so rare.
Yeah, we've been accused of, you know, providing too much information, and that place was a lot better before you came along and said, go here or go there. But, you know, that's the way it is. You know, people want to know that if you turn left out of the train station, you find a nice little hotel in 100 metres. You turn right and you get mugged. You know, that's the sort of basic information that we were very often trying to supply.
Tony, I'm curious whether you think now people feel curtailed to a degree, because we know so much about the world and we know places that are dangerous, genuinely dangerous. Foreign Office advice probably is a lot more accurate than it used to be, or more of it. I just wonder if when you look at travelling now, do you think that the world has, in a funny kind of way, got a bit smaller?
In some ways it has. You know, we do have, in some ways, far too much information. We know a lot about everything. But I always say that people who want to get off the beaten track, who want to discover adventure, who want to find something new, they will do it. And I'm a great believer, and you know, I'm far from a young backpacker these days, but I'm a great believer in them, because they get out there on these first trips they've ever done, first time they've been out doing things themselves in the outside world. And, you know, it's a wonderful experience. They most of the time have a wonderful time, and I totally approve of that. So yeah, you know, ignore the fact that there's a lot of information out there. Go and beat your own track.
Tony, what's left on the list? I mean, you've travelled a lot. You, Maureen, have travelled a lot. You split your time between the UK and Australia. What's the adventure that's next for you?
I've got so many. I've got a wish list, a bucket list that's a mile long.
What's at the top?
Every time you turn around, what's the top? Well, I'm going to Uruguay very soon. I've always wanted to go to Montevideo, just across the River Plate from Buenos Aires. And there's Fray Bentos. What a wonderful name for a town. The town of Fray Bentos. I think there's something in England that's named after Fray Bentos.
Yes, everyone's thinking
I want to
of
go
pies in a
there while
tin.
I'm in Uruguay.
Tony, can I just ask you one thing? I know
That's where it came from.
I know you're talking about amazing journeys. Not everyone has the wherewithal or the time to go and do these incredible journeys. I often think that, you know, opening your eyes and looking just around you can also be, you know, a great adventure. That sounds terribly twee, but do you know what I mean?
You know, you're 100% correct, and it's one of the things we learned from the pandemic. We learned to look at our own backyard, and you know, just go 5 miles from home and see what you find. You know, that's been a real eye opener, and I think that's great. You know, travel doesn't have to be transcontinental. It can be local as well. I know within a couple of 100 yards of where I'm standing right now, there's a youth hostel, or at least there was a youth hostel. I hope it's still there. And, you know, that's for young people, that's often the first door they open, is staying in youth hostels. But yeah, there's whatever is next door to you can be just as interesting as what there is on the other side of the world.
Lovely to chat to you, Tony. Thank you very much. A lot of people have very fond memories of the guides and places they've been over the years, so it's really nice to catch up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
It's time to find out what's happening wherever you're waking up this morning. We'll be back with the headlines at 8 o'clock. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.